Om. 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 Saishwaraya Vidmahe Satyadevaya Dhimahi Tanna Sarva Prachodayat. Om Saishwaraya Vidmahe Satyadevaya Dhimahi Tanna Sarva Prachodayat. Om Saishwaraya Vidmahe Satyadevaya Dhimahi Tanna Sarva Prachodayat. Om. Offering my humble pranams at the lotus feet of our beloved Mother Sai, and thanking him for blessing us week after week with people I refer to as his gems. Today is someone not new to us. There's nothing much that I have to say about her except that she, recollecting her experiences, made us connect with the fact that each one of us is in a journey with Sai. And the first time she spoke, we heard about how reading a book brings that attraction, how journeys that we traverse, we see him without knowing that it is him. And we see him in person and realize that it is him. We aspire to study something and then he chooses what your path is because he has already decided that before you can even imagine that. And then the pursuit of a gold medal and the fact whether you would get it or not, and then it happens. And when it happens, it happens. And following that, when you think all is hunky-dory, then you find yourself in all kinds of challenges, murky waters, where again he comes back to remind you that I am there. Whether it is the speaker or her parents, the very fact that they have absolute faith in Swami has seen their journey progress, where I would say the way she has narrated it would be like a sky jumper who jumps off, and all of us are keen to see how the landing would be. But then the beauty of the landing is the fact that when you press and pull, or rather when you pull the strings that is connected to your back, the parachute, which is neatly folded, opens up and makes the landing absolutely a breeze. So here is someone who has gone to the extent of saying how I met my partner in this journey of life the last time. I would like to see where the journey has progressed since then, because this journey is not different from many of us. But when we listen to the journey, we realize how blessed we are to be born when he walked the earth, to be alive where every moment is an opportunity to reminisce and connect with him. So here we have Sister Sinduja Karthik on our 100th week of Sai Govind Satsangh, which none of us believed or knew that it would happen, and it just happened. So presenting to you, Sister Sinduja Karthik. Sai Ram.
Sai Ram, thank you for that succinct introduction. For the third opportunity to be here with everybody and to share the next phase of experiences that one has been through. I think the part 3 is very similar to part 1 in terms of the way the session actually happened. If I recall correctly, for part 1, Anu had messaged me saying, we desperately need a speaker for tomorrow. Would you be able to uh, make some time? And I remember sharing at that point that I was quite clueless as to what I was going to do, and I landed up here. And before I knew it, it had extended into my becoming a part of this family. A very similar kind of conversation happened with Venkatana yesterday, when I was woken up with a message asking if I would be willing to speak again today. But this time I didn't make the mistake of thinking twice. I just said, let's go ahead. Because I think the timing is something that he plans. And this time he sort of gave me a very indirect indication. I didn't understand it was that till this message came to me yesterday from Venkatana. About 3 or 4 days ago, I think, my sister, Shailaja, who's also been on this series, had a dream. And it was a setting where she and I were getting ready to sing bhajans in front of Swami. And Swami was, fussing around a lot about the mic placement, apparently. He wanted it to be placed just perfectly so that we would be heard properly. And he took every pain to ensure that things were in place before we could start singing for him. And she said it was a very small dream, but the details were so clearly recalled in her mind. I was wondering why am I suddenly appearing in that dream along with her, and why this mic, and why is Swami indicating to me that he wants to listen to me. And then I get this message yesterday saying, will you speak? So it was possibly indicative of the fact that Swami is reminding me, saying that time to reconnect. In the last couple of years, I think all of us across the world have had to go through something in life that none of us ever thought would happen, which is this pandemic and all that it has put us through. And interestingly, both in January 2021 as well as January 2022, my immediate family was affected by COVID, both the waves. And each time it has brought challenges with it that have had to absolutely test us to the limit to be able to figure out how much can we push through this test to come out successful on the other end. So the last time that I was here for the part 2 Satsangh, I think the logical point at which we had stopped was Swami having blessed my wedding to Karthik, and how that entire, there was this mega drama that had happened during the wedding with the picture falling on my head. And but subsequently things being kept completely, safe and shubham in terms of the way everything concluded at that point. What I didn't realize then was there was going to be a commencement of a journey which connects all the way to the recent pandemic, as well as everything that one has had to go through because of these challenges. I used to keep wondering, why did Swami's photo fall on my head? What was he trying to tell me? Because nothing is an accident with him. Neither his photograph nor his physical presence, none of it is by chance. Things don't just happen. They're not coincidence. So there was this cusp at that point where I think all of us in 2011 had to deal with Swami not being with us physically anymore, and the need for us to start connecting with that same energy and love on a daily basis without having the liberty to go running to him in person and seek guidance. Combined with that, the photo falling on my head, I felt was like, very symbolic, Swami trying to knock some sense into my head kind of thing, which as future incidents proved, every time there is pain, one needs to welcome it to be able to understand what's beyond it. When we look at Swami and us, when the physical form was there, there was a sense of there's guarantees in life. I know that we all, Bhagawan always used to say there are no guarantees, right? You uncertainty, love my uncertainty, but there was still that feeling that he is there. Anything seems to be going off track or one is confused, that the feeling that one could go to the physical form and get guidance was very, very settling a feeling on the inside. So the shift from certainty in his uncertainty to now living completely in a sense of faith that that energy is still with us is not an easy one. And the only way one can figure out whether faith has progressed to surrender and continues to remain in regardless of what the circumstances, if you are tested. If everything is going your way all the time, you're never going to actually know what is your capacity to be able to trust in God. So 2012, which was about a year after our wedding, a completely new phase was about to begin in our lives. And it's sort of commenced with our being blessed to conceive our first child. Her name, subsequently, I'll come to how the name also came about. The fact that we were even blessed to have a child in itself was a miracle, because at the point when there was a lot of health issues and I used to keep going to the doctor for various treatments, and I had the fortune of actually consulting with doctors in our own hospital, in Swami's hospital. And the senior gynecologist over there, somebody with many, many years of experience, very close to Swami. And she told me repeatedly that, this doesn't seem to be on the cards for you. And if you decide that you want to go the medical route to sort of get some treatment done and conceive, I'm more than happy to help you with that. But somewhere in the back of our minds, for Karthik and I, we decided that if this is meant to happen, let it happen on its own with Swami's blessing. If it is not meant to be, then we accept that. The doctor, for some reason, was insistent. She said, you keep coming back. Every 2 weeks you come, come for your checkups and I'll see. And I still remember clearly, it was April 2012. And she told me, really, really doesn't seem to be headed in the direction that you're hoping. So I would definitely advise you to get the treatment done. I didn't say anything. I remember coming back home that day, I took Vibhuti and I told Swami, I know we live also, in times in society and family, everybody's hoping that, when you get married, there is a blessing in the form of a child in the house. But I said, if it is meant to be, let it be. But otherwise, give me the strength to believe that this is all your will. About 2-3 weeks after that day and after that prayer, I found out that I had conceived our first child. And nothing out of the ordinary. We just prayed and we were blessed, and that's about it. And that was the first indication that if you are willing to let go and let God, things will happen. The initial part of the journey of carrying the child was quite, uneventful. Everything was going well and my health was also holding up. And as has been the case with me and Swami, every time there is, when the 11th hour is when the tests start increasing. So literally in the 11th month, So in that 11th, I'm sorry, in the 10th month, when I was like, so sort of getting to the point where the delivery was, so the date was coming closer, I developed a complication which ended up in my, losing a lot of blood on a daily basis. And the doctor said it's not very safe to keep it the way it is, and it's a good idea for us to go in for a surgery, and not wait till things happen naturally and you have a delivery. I wasn't completely happy with the decision to undergo surgery, because I just felt that if we were to wait and uh, trust in Swami, maybe things would just become all right. So there was this tug of war. Do I accept this as his will, or should I be steadfast in my prayer, which should normally take that as well? So what is it? And now there is nobody in Puttaparthi to go running to give a letter to, or ask for guidance or anything of that sort. So this had to come from within. And for those of you who had the fortune of listening to Karthik speak, you would have realized that for him, there was only one thing, which is whatever happens is Swami's will. There's never any strong opinion, strong notion, this is right, that is wrong. So in this particular case, he was no help whatsoever, because he wasn't telling me that, this is what we should do. Every time I asked him something, he said, whatever is Swami's will, that is the thought that will come to you. And I told him every 10 minutes, some other thought is coming to me. So what should I do? So his only answer used to be, let's just pray in silence and things will take care of themselves. So in a manner of speaking, the decision got taken out of our hands, and the doctor decided, she said, I'm not giving you a choice. It has to be surgery. It can't be anything else. That sort of helped, because then we weren't allowed to think anymore. Interestingly, because I was also having this conversation just when I logged in today, and Venkatana was asking me, was there some issue with your audio? Doesn't seem to be connecting. And I said, no, actually, I clicked on the link before 4:30 Indian time, because it's 4:30 to 6 is Rahu Kalam on a Sunday. So we have this kind of certain things that we abide by even now, Rahu Kalam, Yamakandam, then the kind of Tithi, all of that we look at. So interestingly, the date that was given for my delivery by the doctor, which also she said was an immovable date, because she was not going to be available from the following week for a month, since she was traveling out of the country. And she didn't want to hand over my case to anybody else. Purely from a Hindu calendar, Tamilian calendar perspective, it wasn't the best of days to willfully take a step in this direction. If something were to have happened on its own, then it is an accepted fact. But if this is something which you have planned and you have set a date for it, it is not something one would have done, looking at the Panchangam and so on. So it didn't really help that when I was being, admitted to the hospital, there was a lot of angst in the minds of family members, that is this the best day to go in for this? What is the outcome going to be? Is it good for the child to come in, to take birth on a day like this, when the entry of that soul onto this planet, and for it to actually be embodied, should come with all unmixed blessings. So rewind to about, I think, 3 weeks prior to this entire surgery actually happening, 3 to 4 weeks. I was sitting in front of Swami's altar and praying, that everything should go well. And of course, in India, even now, we don't get to know what the gender of the child is going to be. And the only thought that came for some reason is that it's going to be a girl. And the name that was given to me was Prarthna. And this is when I was praying to Swami. Just the thought just sort of popped into my head. And when Karthik happened to come home at that point, and he said, what happened? You seem to be a little in a daze. So I said, I think we just got the name of the child that's going to be born to us. And he asked me, is it something to do with the fact that, we've been this, everything about this journey has been about being a prayer. So it seemed too much to be just a coincidence. And I said, the name that's been given is Prarthna. He said, it's perfect. And we'll not even think about what it's going to be if it's a boy. We'll think about that if it turns out to be a boy. And we left it at that. And on the day of my scheduled surgery, after the prep and everything had been done, I was waiting in the ward to be taken to the operation theater. And the doctor came to my room, and she just took both her hands and she placed it on my head. And her hands were actually shaking. And she said, I needed to come here and pass on the blessings and calm myself before we go in for this. I said, what happened? And she said, this morning, I stood in front of Swami's photograph, and I joined my palms, and I prayed intensely from the bottom of my heart that Swami should perform the surgery and that everything should go well, and that this child should come in with all unmixed blessings. And believe it or not, the minute I opened my eyes, my hands were filled with vibhuti. And I just wanted to come and pass on that energy to you even before you're taken to the operation theater, because I want you to believe that this is being done by Swami and it is not being orchestrated by us. For me, that was sufficient to understand that this was his will, and I had to be accepting of it, and I needed to stop questioning why surgery, how, post-operative pain, all those thoughts that are going through your head. It put a stop to it completely at that point. So I was wheeled in, and yes, as indicated, we were blessed with a baby girl, and there was no second thought. We knew the name that she had come with, and it was going to be a very, not just a name, but it was going to be a representation of what our journey has been from the point that she came into our lives. Every single day has been an opportunity to be in prayer from the moment that she came into our lives. So after the child was born, and the initial, everybody is relieved and there is a lot of euphoria and everyone's extremely thrilled and there is news going around. And then slowly, when things settle down, is when reality starts taking over. So the child didn't have a very easy time in the first 1 week. Extreme case of jaundice to the point that she had to be kept under a UV lamp for almost 6 days, which generally for a lot of newborns 2 to 3 days is what it is, but this was 6 days continuously. And she used to be separated from me for many hours in the day. But the one thing that every nurse who was on duty used to keep coming and telling me is that it's very strange, but your daughter is very, very calm. She's not a troublesome child at all. She just takes the treatment and she keeps sleeping all the time. So I said, okay, that's very good, but I hope this phase is sort of the only test that she has, and after this, everything else should just take care of itself. So fast forward to a couple of months later. So when the child, I think she was about 50 days old. Things seem to have been going well in terms of my healing and my being able to take care of her, when suddenly one day there was this excruciating pain where, that area where the surgery had happened. This was 50 days after the surgery, not a week, not 2 weeks. And there was, there's this excessive discharge that started coming from the stitches. So I called up the doctor, and she was not consulting in our hospital at that time. She was on duty somewhere else and very far away from where we were staying. But she said, I don't have a choice, you'll have to come in. So took the baby along because I can't leave the child at home and go. And she said that infection seems to have set in into the stitches. And she said, I don't understand how this has never happened before, where 50 days after surgery that the stitches start getting infected. And it is I really haven't seen something of this kind. And then she did a lot of, cleansing. And then she taught me and my mother how to take care of it at home. She said, otherwise you'll have to keep coming to the hospital on a daily basis for the next 2-3 weeks. And that is not going to be the ideal situation with a child that young. So my mom, being who she is, just used to keep praying for strength, and really took care of me at that point in time. But what this also did is it delayed the overall recovery process. One of the things is, if you're not very mobile after childbirth, the weight gain becomes a lot, and then it starts having other kind of repercussions, which is what I was going to be in for very soon. So about 3-4 months down the line from that point, I still used to have a lot of pain, despite the fact that this infection had been controlled. The pain just wouldn't go. It was like there was this feeling of those adhesions which were there on the inside. So try as I might, I couldn't actually walk around much. And by and by, I started developing arthritis in both my legs. And I think it was when, how old was she? I think she was about 8-9 months old when I started having issues holding the child and even walking around the house, because my knees would start buckling. And there were many times when I almost would lose balance. And one fine day when the child was about 10 months old, I actually fell down on the floor with her in my arms because I wasn't able to keep myself up. So again, the doctor said, you need to start walking, get your weight down. I said, I'm not even able to take the next step. What walking am I going to do? And so there is this tug of war, right? What do I do to get myself better, at the same time be there for the child? And there's only those around you can only offer you placations. They really can't be there in terms of helping your body heal. So the power of prayer was again brought to my notice very, very strongly, because what happens is when you're in physical pain, the last thing on your mind is God and reaching out to him, because you're just dealing with the pain at that point in time. And it's a very real thing, right? Because day and night you're attending to the child's needs, to the household. And then in the middle of all this, you have this body just not willing to do what it's supposed to do. So it starts playing tricks on your mind as well. You start questioning the faith that you have. You start questioning whether this is ever going to get better. And it took a lot of willpower to keep taking vibhuti and saying, it's all going to be fine. And it really didn't seem to be. There used to be some good days, and then it would revert to being excruciating and difficult to just get on with the day. When Prarthna was about 1.5 years old, there was an episode where I was doing my work at home and I suddenly started feeling giddy. So it's sort of built up, right? There was the surgery, and then there was the infection, and then the pain, and then arthritis, and then now there was giddiness. So a 1.5 years of many, many physical challenges, one after the other. And 2 or 3 days, this giddiness kept happening, and I kept thinking that maybe I'm just tired and I should rest and so on. And one fine day, I think it was in the afternoon around 2:30, and she was sitting next to me and playing. I got up to go get a drink of water. I came back and I was going to sit down next to her. And the next thing I know, all I can remember is that I blacked out. And I was alone at home with the child because Karthik was at work, and both our families. My parents stay in Bangalore, but they don't stay right next door, and his parents stay in Madurai. So we're actually a nuclear family. So there was nobody else at home to help. Nobody even knew that I had passed out. A 1.5-year-old is not going to be able to tell anybody something's happened. I know that I blacked out only because when I opened my eyes again, it was 6:30 in the evening. And when I woke up and when I came to, I was actually on my face, sprawled out on the floor, and all I could feel is something soft tapping me on the cheek. This little child had sat next to me for 4 hours trying to wake me up. And she wasn't crying, she wasn't out of sorts, she was just there. And, and I could hear her trying to make some sounds to wake me up. And then when she saw me open my eyes, she smiled at me widely. There was no feeling of, of shock or, anxiety, nothing. It just had, I'm very sure, though I had not actually been there. She's not gone to the, bathroom. She's not done anything, because there was nothing was messed up. Nothing else was out of place. The kitchen is accessible. The door is accessible. Nothing literally was out of place, which meant that she probably was right there the entire time. And if that isn't Swami, I don't know what is. So when I came to, and then I called up Karthik, and then he said, let's get it checked tomorrow just to see what's happening. And I get the news in 2-3 days time after the checkup that I've developed a condition which is called as reactive hypoglycemia. So what happens in this is, generally when you eat, I'm sure everybody in this gathering either has had it done or would have known somebody who's done it, where you've had a sugar test done. Okay? So if you do fasting, there is a particular value. And then if you do a postprandial, it's supposed to be higher than that since you've eaten. My fasting sugar was about 75, and my postprandial, and they did this test 3 or 4 times, 3-4 days in a row. Postprandial would be around 39-40. It would crash. Within half an hour of my eating, the sugar level would crash, and that's what caused the blackout. So how do you deal with something like this? This is not, you don't deal with this through medication, because there's no way to artificially get your sugar up through medication, right? You can only control it. So the doctor again said, you need to start walking. I said, one more doctor tells me I need to walk, I'm going to scream now. So I said, I've got pain, and you're telling me that if I'm not careful, I will pass out again, and you want me to go for walks. So none of this was actually making sense. So after I got this diagnosis, I actually sat down with the reports. The doctor had also recommended some changes in the diet and some lifestyle changes. And I was not in the mood for any of that. And I just sat in front of Swami and I said, you know what? All I know right now is none of this is really helping me. And I'm really tired of being ill all the time. It's not a great feeling that every time somebody calls you or is, comes over to see you, you have to keep saying, I'm not feeling well. And I have a child who's probably not seen her mother actually in good health from the time she was born. So it's not something that I signed up for. And right now, all the things that are being told to me that I need to do, I don't feel like doing it. So my prayer to you is, please give me the willpower. Because without that push, I'm not even going to be able to get started. And after that, my mind actually went blank, which for anybody who knows me and for anyone who's listened to the last 2 satsangs, you would know it's an extremely difficult task for my mind to be silent and thoughtless. And it actually went blank. I think for the next hour or so, I could not think. It just went blank and I just kept sitting there. And then there was this calm that sort of descended, and a feeling that a little bit of self-belief started returning, that, if he has put you in a circumstance, he would only do so because he trusts that you will have the strength to get out of it. He will not put you in a test that goes beyond what your capacity is. And your capacity includes the capacity to trust in him, to have prayer as your ally when nothing else seems to make sense. So I made a new beginning the next day onwards. And within about 6 months, I turned things around and really got it to a point where I was actually back to my original self. All the episodes stopped. The arthritis also got reversed. And every test that was performed came back with a clean bill of health. And for the first time, I think when the child was about 2.25 years, 2 years, about 2 years, 3 months, I started taking her out to the park to play and actually be with her and experience what it is to be a mother beyond just giving her food and, taking her to the restroom and putting her to sleep. So it was a very liberating feeling. And again, that sense of both happiness as well as complacency started setting in, that every test that we had to be through is behind us. And that is a mistake one repeatedly makes, because that is when Swami will tell you, okay, now that you have reached saturation point with your contentment, it shows me that you're ready for the next test. But what was about to hit us is something that I don't think we were prepared for at all. So one thing I must say is, at least in all his mercy, the tests have been in serial order rather than when it rains, it pours kind of thing, right? It's not like everybody is ill simultaneously and nobody can take care of each other. So he ensured that he got me back on my feet, and that I was in very good shape to be able to multitask and take care of everything else, and then decided to sort of bring the next bombshell to land upon us. 2.5-year-old child, that is Prarthna, was 2.5, and right from the time that she was about, I think, 4 or 5 months old, whenever she would get a fever, she would actually, the temperature would go up to about 104 or 105 degrees. It was a very strange thing. And then the doctor said, there are some children, that the control center in the brain, which regulates the body temperature, sometimes it takes a while for that to develop completely in some children. And so it'll sort of go extremely high and then plummet and then reach its average kind of thing, which is all very fine, but it didn't seem to be getting any better. Every time she had a fever, this would spike like this. It would be there for about 3 days, and then things would suddenly come back to normal. So initial 1-2 times when it happened, we were obviously very worried, and then it sort of became routine. Okay, this is what we know we have to expect. We'll prepare accordingly and take care of her. So when the child was 2.5 years old, one fine day she developed 104 fever. I wasn't really perturbed, because I knew, okay, so the next episode of 3 days is going to happen, so I will take care of it. And she had the fever, and normally when we used to give the that pediatric crocin, it would come down, and along with that we'd give some other medicine because the temperature is very high. It can impact the brain if it stays that high for too long. So we would give the medication, and within about 2 hours the temperature would come back down. So that's how the it was always. This time around, regardless of what we gave her, 8 hours continuously the fever remained. So it would start at around 8 a.m. and without a break till 4 p.m. she would have this 104, 105 fever. And then suddenly it will plummet to 98.4. So this happened one day. I thought, okay, freak incident, probably just really bad viral, not going to panic. Early morning the next day at 4 a.m., she developed it again, and it went on till noon, 104, 105 fever. Came down for about 4 hours, spiked again from 4 p.m. to about 2 a.m. So then again tried the medications. So I allowed it to sort of happen for 3 days before I decided let's seek medical intervention. He took her to her pediatrician, and the doctor said, pattern looks like a viral, but the temperature seems to be very extreme. So we'll give the medicine more frequently to sort of keep it under control. And she said, doesn't look like anything that requires an antibiotic, because her throat is otherwise clear, or there's nothing, no other congestion, it's just the fever. We did as directed. Every single day it continued spurts of 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours of 104 fever, followed by a 4-hour gap, followed by another 8-hour episode. It went on for a week. Then the doctor said, let's start her on antibiotic because, maybe there is a hidden bacterial infection and which is not manifesting any other symptoms. So we put her on a course of antibiotics. Generally for children that age, they say 3 days is a sufficient course. Not a dent on the pattern. 8 hours up, 4 hours down, 8 hours up. And I mean, not 100, 101, 104. This is like, going beyond, she's like trying to exceed all expectations on a daily basis. And the 3-day course of antibiotics turned into a 5-day course, turned into a 7-day course, still no respite. So 2 weeks up, 14 days, still no change. Then the doctor said, I'm going to have you bring the child in tomorrow when another consultant who comes to our hospital. He's also a Swami devotee, but he's also a pediatric specialist. He's a pediatric surgeon. He might have some more insights into this case. He might have seen more things like this. So let's have him take a look. He looked at it. He then recommended some blood tests for the child. We took the blood tests, nothing, absolutely nothing was visible in it. So he then gave us, he told us, okay, I'll give you a different kind of antiviral medication. You try that for a week and then we will see. And if it starts coming down after the 3rd day, you can stop the medicine. 21 days up, still no change. And after this, I think I was numbed into surrender. It wasn't a voluntary, I will now surrender to Swami. It was just like the brain just stopped working, right? Now it's like, okay, I will prepare for 8 hours sitting next to her with, cold compress. The 4 hours that the fever is down, I'll give her something to eat, because if I try to give her something when the fever is very high, she would start throwing up. So there was only the 4 hours in a day when she was able to even ingest anything. So I'd have to time it and ensure that I'm next to her and give this to her and then prepare again for the next 8-hour episode. So in a very strange way, it was surrender to the circumstance where I stopped questioning why is this happening, because anyway, nobody seems to be having any answers and nothing is actually working. Then the doctor said, I would like us to run a different type of set of tests, which we don't normally, would do for children this age. There is, that aspiration from the stomach. They'll have to put a tube into the nose and then, take out the fluid and then analyze that to see if there is anything wrong with the digestive system or anything else internally, which is not showing up on the blood test. And this would have to be done on an empty stomach. 3 days every morning at 6:45 or 7 o'clock in the morning, this test would need to be done. And since they don't do it in Swami's hospital, it would involve taking the child to a hospital in the city at that hour in the morning, getting it done and bringing her back. And I would take the car, 6:30 in the morning, put her in the car with me, take her, and actually, and see, first day she didn't know what she was in for, so she didn't realize they were doing this to her. Second day onwards, the minute she got into the car, she knew that we're headed somewhere that's not going to be very good. Through all of this, the one thing that continued is not a single tantrum. Never did she say, why is this happening? The only thing she would say is, I'm finding it uncomfortable. With all the pinpricks and everything else that was happening with the fever, not once did she shed a tear, even when she had her high fever. She would just say, I'm uncomfortable. Can you be next to me? Which in itself was a lesson to me. How does a child, a 2.5-year-old, who's undergoing so many challenges, able to just be there without questioning what's happening, without crying? For me, that was a living lesson as to what surrender actually is, because it's not a mental process that she's surrendering. She's just, that being has accepted that this is what it is without complaint. So the 21 days turned to 28 days. We were waiting for the result of that aspiration test to come, and it said everything is perfectly normal. There's nothing wrong with her digestion, nothing wrong on the inside. They changed the course of medication for the 4th time. 1 month turned into 1.5 months. There was still no respite. And then the doctor said, we will test for tuberculosis, because sometimes it might be, sort of lurking in the background, and that is the fever might be the thing that's expressing itself as a symptom. And when we went there again, this particular test was done in a lab, an exclusive lab again in the city. And as luck would have it, the day that we landed up for the test, the person who is, meant for, pediatric drawing of blood is a very different skill set from people who do it for adults, because the veins are much thinner, and and also that wanting to be able to connect with the child so that they are at ease when this is done, because if they tense up, it becomes that much more difficult. As luck would have it, the person who was skilled at that wasn't there on that day when we went, and the test had to be done that day because the doctor said, this is getting out of hand, we need to see what's going on. And after he had extracted the blood, the fellow said that by mistake I contaminated the tube, we'll have to redo it. And the child, who was already running a fever and so much of agony, had to undergo 3 pinpricks instead of 1, with so much of blood being drawn. And through all of it, I think Karthik and I cried more than she did. She was obviously in pain because of being pricked, but otherwise, which child would agree when we told her, he's had to do it, he has to do it again, instead of saying that I won't do it. She said, if you hold on to me, I will show him my hand. Tests came back, still nothing which was definitive, but it seemed to be showing a pattern that it might be what the doctor was suspecting, but he wasn't convinced. He said, this kind of almost positive doesn't give me the right to start her off on a course of medication for TB, which is a 9-month antibiotic course of a very high strength, which can have many side effects and repercussions for a child that age. So I said, you know what, we really don't have any knowledge in this area. You decide what has to be done. He said, let's just continue with the antiviral medication to keep the temperature under control. We will give this some time, and the next time you do the test, ensure that she's running a high fever when the test is done, because that might actually make the pathogen express itself in the blood. So this, as you can understand, this became our way of life, right? And around the time that it was about 85 days of this having continued, the specialist told me, you come to another hospital where I normally consult, because there we have some equipment which might help me with further diagnosis. And we'll take a definitive step after that. Just be patient with me for some more time. I said, absolutely fine. You tell me what I'm supposed to do. I'll bring the child. So I took her along. And the first thing was, this was a very elite hospital. And unless you have like an appointment 3 days ahead of time, you're not even going to get in. And the last thing anybody will do is send you out of turn. Without appointment, you can't get in. And if you have an appointment, you can't go out of turn. I didn't have an appointment. All I had was a phone call from this doctor saying, you bring her. So I went in and I sat down with her in the waiting room. And then, they have these receptionists and other associates who would be walking around trying to ensure that people who don't have an appointment aren't sitting there. And they came and asked me for my token and everything else. And I said, I don't have an appointment. I said, you can't be here. I said, no, the specialist has asked me to come. The specialist can't give appointments on his own. The hospital has to. I said, see, I don't know about all of this. You can go and ask him directly. He said, he's not yet here. He's in surgery. So I said, okay, I will wait here till he says one way or the other. I don't have a problem sitting here. As long as you don't mind me occupying a chair here, I'll just sit quietly here with my daughter. The doctor comes from surgery, goes into his office, sends a note out to the receptionist saying, if there is Sinduja with her child, baby Prarthna, please send them in right away. And this lady was shell-shocked. There was this entire room full of people waiting for their appointment, and you're just sort of, superseding all of that. And she was very grudgingly came to me and said, you're being called inside with your child. So I said, will not be very long. So he already knows the history. He just wanted to do a quick check. After the check was done, the doctor called his assistant and said, she will be coming back again a couple of times for consultation, and please ensure that no consultation fees are collected. The lady was even more flabbergasted. Said, why would we not collect a consultation fee? And this is done upfront. The minute you walk in at the desk, even if you have to get into the next stage, you need to first pay the fee. Otherwise, they're not going to let you in. So he said, no, she said, no, they've already collected the fee. And he said, okay, then I will repay it from my account to her, and we'll make the adjustment. And he actually paid me the money back. And I said, doctor, you don't need to do this right now. He said, no, this is Swami's child, and this is Swami's work, and I don't want any of this being mixed up with what normally happens in this hospital. I only brought you here because we need to be able to do some tests which we don't have back in our hospital. And I didn't know what to say, and I thanked him, and he said, I'll get back to you if I have any results on this front. Just take care of her. And he was getting very worried that this didn't seem to be getting any better. On the 90th day of this entire saga was going to be my follow-up appointment with the doctor, after we had a few conversations on the phone where he told me, everything is pointing towards tuberculosis, and we might have to start off this 9-month treatment. Just come mentally prepared for that. Come and meet me. I went there, and this time the lady saw me, and she didn't even look at me. And then the minute the doctor called me, she just said, please go. Went and sat there. He took Prarthna's hand in his, and he kept looking into her eyes for some time. And he said, all the medical know-how that I have is telling me that we should start the TB medication. And all the faith that I have in Swami is telling me we should not. So if you can trust me, let us give this 2 more days. I know it's been a very, very long time that you've been going through this with the child. 3 months is no joke. But if you look at her, even now she's smiling at me, which tells me that whatever she's going through is just some karmic debt that Swami seems to be clearing. So let's not lose faith. Another 2 days, and what I'm going to tell you now is stop all the medication that we've been, don't even give her paracetamol. Every time the fever goes up, mix vibhuti and water and give it to her. Do only that. Don't do anything else. 48 hours later, give me a call and tell me. If it still continues, then I will take it as a sign from Swami that we should start the medication. Otherwise, I'm not willing to put such a young child through such rigorous medication for 9 months. It's not a joke. It will have an impact on her development. So I said, and anything, whatever you're saying right now, I will take it as Swami's word. I told him, I said, I've stopped questioning. The minute we cross the 3-week mark, from that point onwards, my brain is sort of just gone into complete acceptance of everything that's happening. So I went home. The fever again spiked that night, but this time when I woke up in the night, I gave her the vibhuti with the water, the way he had recommended. And interestingly, for the first time, she broke into a sweat. Earlier, it would stay for 8 hours and then it would start coming down. This time, on its own, it broke into a sweat within about 15-20 minutes. And she went back to sleep. For the first time, the 8-hour episode was cut down to about 4 hours. And then progressively, it became 3 hours, 2 hours. And after the 2-day extension expired, for the first time after 92 days, she went 24 hours without fever. So this time I didn't call him up. I just asked in Swami's hospital whether the consultant, the specialist is going to be there. And I just told him I'll be coming there to see him. I took Prarthna along. And I said, for the first time, there's been no fever for 24 hours. He said, fine. I believe she's cured. And that's it. We will just take it as Swami's blessing that everything is fine, and we leave it at that. And then Prarthna looks at him and says, no fever today. I am fine. And he said, that is enough. That's enough for us. The child says that she's fine. We don't need to do anything else. And from that point onwards, the regular monthly or bi-monthly fevers that she used to get also stopped. She used to get fevers very often when she was, before this episode of 90 days happened. That also stopped. The once a year or once in 6 months that every child gets is what she would sometimes pick up. But that was the turning point in terms of her actually getting back out of this and into a space of complete health. And the name that was given by Swami to her actually made so much sense, to stay in a constant state of prayer, because that is the only thing that is a constant. And the state of prayer, the way all of us have been trained by our parents and by our upbringing is prayer is a set of words or, a mantra that you stand in front of an altar and chant. But this episode helped me to understand that that is a very small part of what prayer is. Yes, chanting, speaking out those kind of words is something which carries an energy with it that we don't understand. And definitely it has a calming effect. But prayer and surrender are not different, is what I understood from this entire episode. When you are in a complete state of acceptance that anything that happens is with his blessing, that is a state of prayer. That is a state of surrender. You don't need to then go sit in front of an altar and then think intently about, I want this, because what happens is the minute we say, I want this, or I want a resolution to this, it becomes a desire. It is not a prayer anymore. It is a bargaining chip. It is negotiation. I will say something so that you will do something for me in return. But true prayer is when there is no demand, when there is no desire. It is acceptance of what is at that point in time. And I have to thank Prarthna for putting her body through so much in order for me to understand what that lesson was. Because I don't think, till you actually are in a position where you're willing to sacrifice everything for another human being and willing to give off yourself to a point where you yourself and everything within you ceases to exist, and it is the other soul that is sort of outside of you, which you feel is a part of you. I don't know how to explain it. An extension of yourself, which you would do anything for. Only when you are put through a test with that kind of a relationship that you truly begin to understand what prayer is. So this turned out to be a huge turning point for me in my journey with Swami, where I, for the first time, understood that I don't need to ask him for anything. I just need to learn to accept. Because as long as I'm asking, it means that there is some background script running in the mind. And I would like him to sort of adhere to that script and guide things accordingly. But if things happen and I accept, it means that I'm in tune with him, because then I'm not questioning. So the beauty about spiritual learnings is that it doesn't end with learning. It gets tested repeatedly. And it's not like any of your academic exams where if you for 3 years, you do an exam and then you're given a degree and that degree is yours. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way with Swami. The degree is never yours. As long as you're alive and your mind is working enough to ask a question, it means you haven't passed the test. So the learning from this was now going to be tested and implemented in a very different kind of way. After she had gotten through this part, and for about 3-4 months, her health had sort of stabilized. We decided to pray to Swami to bless us again with a child, because we felt that, Prarthna, the kind of person that she was right from the beginning, I've spoken about how she's uncomplaining, but the other thing that I also had seen in her is that there's a very nurturing side to her. I talked about how when I had fainted, the child sat next to me and kept trying to revive me. I mean, you normally would have a parent do that for a child. She is a parent in the form of a child. Very nurturing. Even with the children around us in the campus who are younger than her, she would go out of her way to take care of them, make sure that they are fine. So we felt that the time was right for her, to have a sibling in her life where that natural side of herself could be expressed towards another, because she had so much to give. Purely from the perspective of having gone through everything that I did in the first delivery, in my right mind, I would have never prayed to have another child, because it took 2+ years to get out of all of that I had gone through. And this was not even the last thing on my mind in that sense. But I think that is where Swami again gives you an opportunity to go beyond what the mind thinks, and to think and to resonate with what is the need of the the soul who's been put in under your care. So for her sake, are you willing to go through this again? But this time I had a slightly different kind of relationship with Swami. After having gone through this 92-day saga with him in Prarthna, I felt much closer to him in terms of being able to speak my mind to him without fear. So we were blessed to conceive our second child, and the due date was given sometime end of May 2016. Now, as is common knowledge across the world, generally, if you've had a surgery for your first delivery, nobody will advise a normal delivery for the second one. But something inside me, it's not a desire, it is not a decision which is stemming out of fear, but it was a commitment, and it was faith, it was courage, it felt right for me to speak to Swami and say, you know what, there is nothing that is impossible for you. And I believe that if you could give me the willpower to get over arthritis, diabetes, and everything else, and be where I am today, and you've now blessed me not once, but twice with the opportunity to have children, I'm going to go one step further and ask you to ensure that this one is a normal delivery. So I was again consulting with a different doctor this time, but in our hospital. And she said, initially everything was going fine for about the first 3 months. And then she came up with the, this point about the fact that you do know that, the 3-month thing has passed. So and everything is looking fine. So it looks like there will be safe passage for the next 6. We will do the surgery in our hospital. And then I stopped her and I said, I don't want surgery. She said, what do you mean you don't want surgery? You don't have a choice. I said, I don't believe I don't have a choice. I believe that if Swami wills it, there's no question of choice. It will happen anyway. She said, all that is very well. And she's also a very staunch devotee. She said, but in terms purely of the medical risks involved, it's not something that in our hospital we would want to take up, because if something happens at the nth moment, we are not built to handle that kind of emergency. So it is not right for me to put you in the position of hoping that this might happen, because upfront I'll tell you it's not possible. Then I did something very unorthodox, which no patient in their right mind should ever do with their doctor. And I said, can you recommend me to some other doctor who will take up this case? She looked a little stunned, and then she said, you seem to be very made up in your mind about going down this route. I said, it's not in my mind. It's a, I can't tell you what it is. It's a belief in my heart. It's not coming from my mind. It's coming from my heart. Hardly anybody in Bangalore will even agree to take up a case like this. It's not recommended at all, and medically it is not right for us to put you in that position. She's got a reputation where she's willing to give the patients a chance to go for a normal delivery, even if they've had surgery earlier, as long as they are cognizant of the risks. So she said, I'm not going to take you off my consultation. You meet with her and then come back and we'll see where it goes from there. I felt this was, professionally speaking, this was an extremely generous thing for a doctor to do, to put the needs of the patient completely before everything else, not worrying about the fact that it is my case and I should take it forward, but look at what the other person is talking about. So based on her advice, I went and I met, and the doctor said, she said, yes, I do cases like this, but you should be willing to accept whatever happens at the last minute. I said, what does that mean? She said, it could very well be, going in the direction of a normal delivery, and suddenly it might change into a C-section. It might not even get to the point where you can have a normal delivery if something goes wrong even before that. If you insist on going ahead with the normal delivery, I cannot guarantee that you might make it out alive. The child may still be delivered, but you may not be around. Thankfully, I went alone for this particular consultation. So this knowledge was only for my ears, and I wasn't about to reveal all of this in its glory to everybody else in the family, because we know that exactly what everyone will say. They'll say, don't sign up for it. And I somehow had felt within that I should stay focused on this intention that has come from within. It is an intention of which is not to be stubborn. It has come from a space of purity, of acceptance that anything is possible with Bhagawan, because he's shown that happen with Prarthna. And the other part that actually inspired this was, Swami, this time around, once this child is born, there will not be one, but two children to take care of. I cannot afford another, lapse in my health to a point where I'll take another 2 years to recover and not be there for either of them and the child that is coming into our family. So the doctor from the other hospital, she said, you know what, my suggestion to you, and this is again, for me, it was mind-boggling. This doctor, Dr. Sita, who was the person the one who was willing to take up my case, she consulted again in a very, very high-end hospital, where, for every consultation you have, even if it is to just go for a routine consultation where your weight is checked and your BP is checked and they say everything is fine, that will be some 1,000, 2,000 rupees. And she's not a devotee, but she'd heard about Swami's hospital. She heard that my father is working there and my husband is working there. And she said, you know what? I see no reason why you should start coming to me right now, because, all your medical care is otherwise in good hands with Sathya Sai Hospital. So why don't you continue consulting with your doctor there, and you come to me only in the 9th month? This was again, just like that pediatrician who refunded the money from his own pocket because he said it's Swami's work, and this doctor is not even in the Sai circles. And she said, I just don't think it's right for you to have to, pay for so many consultations, where you can already get that where you are, and only towards the last 4 weeks you come, because I'll have to monitor closely. Now I had to go back with this proposal to the doctor in our hospital, who should be willing to see me through till 8 months and then hand me over to somebody else. She looked at me, she smiled, she said, you know what, I'm more than happy to do this for you, because I admire that you would even want to try this. So what I will do, and she did something which is unheard of. She said, I will block a date for you for surgery in our hospital also. In case for some reason things don't seem to be going according to the plan that you have in your mind, you can have the delivery here. So you be on my watch, and closer to the date, we'll start having a sort of, you can start going there, but you can still continue consulting with me till the last minute. I said, okay. So 8 months, everything was fine. And this time I had actually, I was working as well. I was in my teaching job, and I think around the 26th or 27th of May is when they had given the date. Till about the 14th of May, I continued working. And I told Swami, I said, this time I'm not going to sit down. I'm not going to take rest. I'm not going to allow anything to, overtake this physical body and make me incapable of taking this through. The last 2-3 weeks, I started going to Dr. Sita, and she said, everything seems to be going in the right direction. And she said, if you really want to ensure that this goes as per your desire, one of the things that really works is in the last 2-3 weeks leading up to the delivery, every day, you do jhadu pocha in your house. And that is not just with a mop, but with the actual, swabbing cloth. So this is like taking things to an extreme, right? My mother was getting like frantic. She's like, all of this is as it is crazy. And then, to extreme, going to an extent where you're really testing my patience. And this time I also told her, I'm not going to come and stay with you, 1-2 months ahead. Finally, she begged, pleaded. Then the last 1 week, I shifted base to my mother's place. My mother-in-law came over to take care of Prarthna, and they were in the hospital quarters. I went and stayed with my mom. The due date came, due date passed, 1 week over, 10 days over, still no sign of anything happening. And then everybody's anxiety started increasing. Strangely enough, I wasn't anxious at all. I just said, okay, if this child wants to continue staying inside for some more time, how does it matter? It is just another matter of another few days. But others didn't seem to take kindly to, this being taken so flippantly. And there was a lot of encouragement to keep asking the doctor, let's just maybe go for the surgery. Then there was a suggestion, why don't you ask our doctor in our hospital, SSSIHL hospital, whether she will take up the case again. So just to humor everybody, I called her, and as luck would have it, she said, I'm out of station, so I'm not here right now. So even if you need, I cannot perform the surgery at this point. So I said, very good. Things seem to be going as per plan. So a full 41.5 weeks, the doctor waited. And then after that, Dr. Sita said, you know what, we'll not push this any further. You come into the hospital and we will try to induce, so that we will hope that it goes as a normal delivery. But as I told you earlier, if it doesn't, you should be willing to let me change it to a surgery at the last minute. I didn't say anything to her. I said, I trust that things will happen as per his plan, and I got admitted. I had no idea what Swami was about to put me through. After the induction happened, it was about 4 a.m. By 12 noon, there had been no progress at all. And strangely enough, the pain became unbearable to the point where I think, Karthik was there and my mother was there. They were the only two people allowed to be there with me. And I think around about 12:30 or 1, I started going slightly insane, because I actually started yelling at them and I wanted to throw things at them, because it was to the point where I was, and despite all of this, the only thing is I don't want surgery. And then my mother was getting frantic. She said, why are you putting yourself through this? It's okay. I am there and Swami is there. We will take care of you. I said, no. Because what had also happened was, just before they induced, there was a sheet of paper that they had my mother sign. And that is the first time she got to read it in print, that if anything happens because of this decision that is taken, the hospital can't be held liable. And she was stunned. She said, how am I going to sign something like this where it is okay for me to say something happens to you during this, I will, be fine with it. I said, this is something I've known for the last 8 months. You just please sign it. It's okay. Nothing's going to happen. So from 4 a.m. to 3:30 p.m., 3:30 p.m., Dr. Sita came and she said, you know what, this is not funny anymore. It's not correct for us to keep putting you through this anymore. I am going to prep you for surgery. Then I told her, I just caught hold of her hand and I said, can you give me another 15 minutes? She said, what is it a question about giving you 15 minutes? This is not something that you can do. Right? I said, I don't know why I'm asking this of you. Please just give me 15 more minutes. And if nothing seems to be turning around, then I will go your way. And then I closed my eyes and I visualized Swami in front of me, and I visualized myself kneeling in front of him, and I caught hold of his feet and I said, you know what, you've brought me this far. I don't know what else you want me to do to prove to you that I have trust in you 100, 1000%. I don't think this would have happened if this is how the outcome had to be. So no more games, no more pain, no more testing. This is it. And then suddenly the pain started having a different kind of a nature. It was not something I can explain. So 3:45, the doctor walks in, and then she says, I don't know what the 15 minutes did, but you're ready for your normal delivery. And at 4:14, this handsome little boy was born. And he brought into our lives a very different flavor from basically from when Prarthna was born. She brought prayer with her. And when he came into our lives, it was as if all of that prayer had culminated in a sense of contentment and immense joy and happiness in that constant connect with being with Swami. Because interestingly, what had happened was, again, about a month before he was due to be born, there was this conversation at home about what name. And this time it wasn't, prayer, meditation, and anything being given. Strangely enough, this entire thing was for somebody who doesn't have any desires whatsoever. Karthik decided to have the lead in this particular conversation. And he said, I want something. I said, what? You never said you wanted anything. He said, no, this child, when it's born, right? The name, I want the name to rhyme with Prarthna. I said, what kind of a? And he said, no, see, your sister's name is Shailaja and your Sinduja. Shailaja, Sinduja. It sounds so nice. So I want both these children also to have rhyming names. I said, I don't know what will rhyme with the Prarthna, and what if it is a boy, right? How can it rhyme with Prarthna? So he just closed his eyes and he said, just wait. And he said, I think I have it. And this name will work whether it is a girl or a boy. I said, what is it? He said, Prasanna. So it's, it doesn't matter whether it's a girl or boy. So it'll be Prarthana and Prasanna. And then he said, let's not divulge this to anybody else, and we'll wait. And, once Swami blesses us with this joy, that joy will be named as, as befits the name. We'll name him as Prasanna. So the child was born. Prasanna was brought into our lives. And within 10 days, I recovered. I was back on my feet. And it would not have happened unless I had gone through everything before that. Those 3 years leading up to conceiving Prasanna had put me through the ringer so many times in so many ways that it strengthened my ability to connect with Swami in ways that can't be explained verbally. It was a different kind of stubbornness. Earlier, the stubbornness was to get my way because I felt it was the best way. This was a stubborn connect to Bhagawan as being the one energy can make anything happen despite what the world tells you. And that kind of faith, prayer, surrender, only if one experiences, one can even understand. Because, and I think it's not that I'm glorifying what I've gone through. I'm saying that every one of us has, I'm sure, experienced this in one way or the other. I'm being given the opportunity to speak about it, so it looks like an experience in itself. But I'm sure anybody in this gathering who reminisces about what they've been through, the highs have actually come from the physical lows. The highs of our connect with Bhagawan have come from the lows that the life has put us through. So what I began to understand post my wedding is that this phase, which is the life that I'm living right now, if you look at the part 1 of the satsang, it was about me trying to make sense of my relationship with Swami and him having to prove to me that he has a place in my life. The second phase was trying to take that connect and keep it alive in everything that I was doing, but in a way that I felt was best, not necessarily what was Swami's will, but trying to sort of make it adhere to what my viewpoint and vision on life was. But this is the part of the journey that has helped me to truly understand that in order for you to accept the blessing as it is, you need to stop thinking, you need to stop questioning, you need to stop having visions, you need to stop having desire, you need to stop having any sort of an agenda, a plan, a roadmap. You just have to be and you have to accept. Which brings me to why I started with talking about the pandemic. I think if one of the greatest blessings that the last 2 years has brought all of us is learning to accept uncertainty. Yes, we seem to tire of seeing each other only online, not being able to go out as much as we wanted to, or not being able to go out without something masking our face, constantly being in a space of fear that what if that this virus inflicts me or somebody in my family and something happens which is irreversible. But if we were to silence all the thoughts and look at it only from the perspective of his will, what has it done? It has shown us that even with limited movement, we can exist. Even with limited interaction, life still goes on. Even if there are curbs on what we would normally want to do, the human spirit is capable of adapting and bringing to life something we never thought was possible. Nothing comes to a standstill because of circumstance. As long as there is breath, there is life. As long as there is intent to live life in the purest way possible, the purpose is always clear. As long as there is a connect to him, everything that we do is sanctified. So both the extreme waves of basically being the third wave right now in India, and in the second wave as well as the third wave, my children, my husband and I were impacted. This time around, the recovery was a lot faster. The second wave, we actually, all four of us together experienced a new kind of surrender where, because of the nature of this, you can't have anybody else come and help you. You can't have even family that is living close by come and check up on you. We couldn't get admitted because who's going to take care of the children? So despite being unable to breathe, unable to speak, unable to get up, unable to even go to the restroom or even have a sip of water, we got through it. We got through it all. Karthik was actually, he developed pneumonia. He had scarring in his lungs. He wasn't able to breathe. There was a point where he couldn't even take the next, breath without it saying, without feeling that there was something weighing down on his chest. And we got through all of it because the one thing that kept us going is this too shall pass and this too is his will. So stop questioning. I do want to mention one thing about that particular one, the second wave when we were down. December 2020, we were actually towards the end of that month, we were scheduled to travel to Karthik's parents' place, to Madurai. And after a long gap, because, it was actually coming together. And just the day prior to our planned travel, I tested positive because I was actually down with fever for almost 3-4 days, and the throat pain and everything, and people just felt, you've not done anything, not gone anywhere, where are you going to get it from? Look at that mercy that Bhagawan had. If we had done the test after we had gone to Madurai, his parents would have been unwittingly exposed to this. His father is a heart patient. He's had a quadruple bypass surgery. And mother is, has got hypertension and she's a diabetic. The immediate reaction when your plans get cancelled is, oh God, why did I have to fall sick at this point? But after we went through what we went through, we realized how beautifully Swami had planned the timing of the diagnosis so that we didn't end up inflicting even more pain on, and that is something we wouldn't have been able to deal with. So all the pain that we went through, it was limited to the physical body having some stress, but otherwise, as long as we stayed connected, the mind was actually at rest. So the learning in this leg of the journey has been stop questioning, start accepting, and hopefully whatever lies ahead will start turning these many years of experiences into, into a sort of a phase of consolidation where, as our children are growing up, they get to understand and emulate what Swami's teachings are without having the benefit of physically interacting with him. And I believe that when we go through what we do, it is so that with a great sense of confidence, we can pass on these things to our children so that they live a fulfilling life without having to go through this entire pain and suffering on their own. I think both Prarthna and Prasanna are very blessed that way, that they are able to witness what they do, with the journey that Karthik and I are on. And for them to grow up in a space where they feel, constantly connected to this energy, even without having to try. And that's a beautiful place to be in. It's a wonderful space that one must continue to encourage them to be in. And I know I've just spoken about 3 experiences, and it's taken quite a bit of time today. I've picked up on those real hard-hitting highlights of the journey. And for me, even at this point, it's actually a reminder, because as we recover from this next wave that we've just gotten out of, this has been a wonderfully timed opportunity for me to relive everything that Swami put us through to, this is also temporary. And I was actually struggling again with getting my willpower back in place just about 2-3 days ago. And the fact that Venkatana gave me this chance to speak about it has helped me understand that I can find it in myself again and reignite it. And the only thing that I need is to remember that he is there with me. And Swami will take care as long as I make him my focal point. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I do want to sing a small little bit of a song. This is something that my mom had actually taught me many years ago. And we've also had an opportunity to sing it a couple of times, for various programs. It's a beautiful song. It's a very well-known song. Just one verse of that. इतनी शक्ति हमें दे न दाता, मन का विश्वास कमजोर होना। इतनी शक्ति हमें दे न दाता, मन का विश्वास कमजोर होना। हम चले नेक रास्ते पे हमसे भूल कर भी कोई भूल होना। इतनी शक्ति हमें दे न दाता, मन का विश्वास कमजोर होना। दूर अज्ञान के हो अंधेरे, तू हमें ज्ञान की रोशनी दे। हर बुराई से बचते रहे हम, जितनी भी दे भली जिंदगी दे। बैर होना किसी का किसी से, भावना मन में बदले की होना। हम चले नेक रास्ते पे हमसे भूल कर भी कोई भूल होना। इतनी शक्ति हमें दे न दाता, मन का विश्वास कमजोर होना। Thank you so much. Jai Sai Ram.
Hi Ram. Every single act, I do not know how the dots get connected, but the dots connect so very well. The first speaker we had was Brother Arunodyan, who spoke about surrender and also said, don't process. Those were his takeaways, which had everything from the LTTE to staying in Prashanti, not knowing when you'll go home, to taking care of young ones with no one else to support but Swami, to 100 weeks later, where you come back and summarize exactly the same, to stop processing and accept. I will always remember All Nippon Airlines. Ask not, accept. All Nippon Airlines is going to be the way I'll remember that, A&A. I guess this is yet another way for many of us to be reminded. Two things I do want to say is that your journey, for you to live every part of it, has been with the support system, which all of us have in our lives, but we don't stop and pause and reflect on the support system. The mind can go wherever it wants at that stage, despite knowing Swami. When ignorance sets in, then or different thoughts come in, you had your parents coming and supporting you. When you thought you wanted to take control of situation, you met someone who was nothing but accepting Swami to do everything that he commands as it should happen. And then when you go back and you look at the journey further, you've spoken about the importance of prayer where miracles happen. That's why it's a miracle. And then you think you want to get over it, and then the mind still comes and says, this is my conviction. Again, he gives you the strength. I guess this is exactly what each one of us go through, but we don't pause and reflect. I think this satsang is all about each one of us being reminded to stop, pause, reflect, not process, but reflect, to value the blessing that we have as Sai in our lives, because this is family. And I guess this journey will continue, where we will get to hear many more in the weeks ahead. But I have to tell you the beauty about reaching out to a person in the last minute, where the person has not slept the previous day and is groggy, to find out what the message is all about. And there is an exchange of interaction saying, let me think. And then she paused and she stopped thinking. Honestly, she exactly did that. She said, I'm not going to think, I'll speak. And she said, I know what I'm going to speak. And that's the beauty, right? We stop thinking and we just do it. He does it. And there cannot be a beautiful 100th satsang than this, where all of us are reminded yet again that he is there in every moment of our lives. We just have to be in that silence to listen to what he's got to say, which is our conscience, which is the Sai in us. Thank you so very much, sister. Stay blessed, stay hungry, stay foolish. This is something that I guess we need when it comes to faith, right? We don't have to process. So, Sai Ram, we shall meet again next Sunday. I don't have an idea of the speaker. He will will it. It shall happen. Please do join in. Pass this positivity around and let's all stay in that positive energy of the love of Sai, which is all that we need for any medicine that is required to heal. Sai Ram, we shall finish off with some slokas. Thank you, Sister Sinduja, once again. Sai Ram. Samastaloka Sukhino Bhavantu Samastaloka Sukhino Bhavantu Samastaloka Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Jai Bolo Bhagawan Shri Satya Sai Baba Ji ki Jai. Sairam, everyone. Stay safe. Spread the positivity. Till next week. Sairam once again.